Hakadosh Boker Or Masechet Gittin Daf Samech Gimel Amud Aleph 63a1 says the Gemara. Bishlema Iitmar Ibcha. It's good if you would have said the exact opposite. What does that mean? It would have been good if Rav Nachman was talking about a case where the woman told her Shlucha, Itkabel li Giti, except for me, the get. Ishtecha Amra, and the shliach tells the husband, Shh. Ishtecha Amra. He comes and he says, right? And the wife says, Haveli Giti, bring me the get. Vehu Omer, right? And he says, Rav Omar, Helach, right? Take it, Kema Shamra, just like she said. Ve'amar, and says of Nachman Amrav, given Shegia get liado, once a get comes to his hands, Megureshet, she's going to be to her hands, it's going to be, no, liado, to his hands. Why are you correcting the wrong way? Right, liado, to his hand, the hand of the shaliach. Megureshet, she's going to be divorced. Almas, you see from here, adibura didahu de kasamir, that on her, right, horeotea, meaning on her commands or on her instructions, right, he's going to be somech. Inami, or once it gets liada to her hands, the adibura didei kasamir, that on the words of the shaliach he's going to be somech. Elahacha, but in our case of Rav Nachman, mishum de akre shliach l'shlichute legamrehu. Once he comes and he's okeres shlichut completely, Tamar that he says shliach lekabla havina lo lecha lo havina. I'm only mukhan to be a shliach kabbalah, not a shliach holacha. Shliach kabbalah means I'm only fitting, right? I'm only willing to be a shliach to accept it, not to take it to her. So because of that, it's completely different. So Amar Ravuna Barchia says Ravuna Barchia, Tashema, let's try to bring another proof. Right? This is from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Haomer itkabel get zel ishti. If a person comes and he says, accept this get for my wife. Oh, lech get zel ishti, or take this get to my wife. We said that if he wanted to retract, he could retract, which means that as long as it didn't get to the hands of the woman, he could retract. Right? Why? Because at the end of the day, as long as it wasn't in her hands, it wasn't given over again. He gave it over to the shaliach, and doesn't help. It doesn't matter. Which one? No, because at the end of the day, it wasn't given to her. The shliach is only a shliach to send it, to give it to her. So just like before giving it to her, he could retract. He could be right here. She's right here. He could be doing this. I don't want to give it to her. He could do that. So same thing with the shliach. Right? He could come and he could retract. What? Reason why is the ratzah. The reason why she's not mitgareshet with receiving the get is because the husband wanted to retract. Halo ratzah. But if he did not want to retract, havi get, it is a good get. V'amayin why? Haba'al lav bar shavu yishliach lekabbalahu. The Baal cannot make an appointment a shaliach for Kabbalah, right? A husband can only make a shaliach leholacha, because the shliach is an extension of his hands. So therefore, is a shliach to take the get, but he cannot be a shliach lekabbalah to receive it. The woman has to receive the get. She can make a shliach to receive the get on her behalf. That's called a shliach kabbalah. But a husband cannot make a shliach kabbalah, because at the end of the day, it's she who has to receive the get, not him. So he can't come and say to John Doe, you are now my shliach to receive the get for his wife. It doesn't work.
She cannot be.
Yeah? It doesn't work. So he says, Ela de amrinan, but rather, kevan shenatav enav legarsha, once he wanted to put his eyes that he wanted to divorce her, meimar amar, he wants to say, tigaresh kol hecha de megarsha. Right, what does that mean? Tigaresh in any way possible that it's going to help. That's what he's trying to say. He says you should get divorced in any way possible, right, that it's going to help. Okay? And therefore, in our case, it means that the husband is going to come and make him as a shliach leholacha. Hachanami, so too. Kevan shenatav nav legarsha. So too in our case, once he wanted to divorce her, Meimar Amaru, he's going to say to himself, Tigaresh kol hecha de megarsha. It's going to work in any way possible. Meaning that if the guy wants to divorce his wife, he's going to do it in a fashion that it will work. It doesn't matter how it is. It doesn't matter whether it's going to be a shliach, lo lecha, shliach, he just wants to divorce her. That's it. So he doesn't care how it works. He just wants to make it work. Okay? So says the Gemara, Hachi Ashta. Can you compare both cases? He says, Hatam, in the case of our Mishnah, where the guy comes and he says, it's kabel gazel ishti, Adam yodea shen shlichu lekabbalah. A person knows that he cannot make a shliach lekabbalah to accept it. Right? Vegamar, and therefore v'natan l'shem ulacha. So for sure he went and he gave it to her, to the guy, as a shliach le'olacha. Hacha, in the case of Rav Nachman, ta'eh, he made a mistake, which means he believed the man that he said b'sheker that he was kilu a shliach lekabbalah, and therefore the husband never made him a shliach le'olacha. So therefore, she's not going to be megureshet even when the get gets to her hand, because it was done wrongly. Meaning, one more time, what was the case? A guy comes to the husband. He tells the husband, "Your wife made me a shliach lekabbalah," and it wasn't correct, really, right? So now what happens is that he made him the shliach, right? So which one?
To receive the get.
To receive the get. Now what happened was it wasn't really shliach lekabbalah, it was shliach lo lecha. But here was a problem, because if the husband did not make him a shliach leholacha, because he accepted his words that he's a shliach for kabbalah, he gives him the get. Was he a shliach lekabbalah? No. So if he wasn't the shliach for kabbalah, he receives it, and now he comes and he gives it to the woman, right? He wasn't made a shliach for kabbalah for the woman, and he wasn't made a shliach for holacha by the husband. So even if the get gets to the hands of the woman, she's not divorced. Because how did she get divorced? The husband never sent over the get, because when the husband sent over the get, he didn't send it as a shliach holacha. He sent it as a shliach kabbalah, that the second the shliach receives it, she's divorced. And the woman didn't send the guy the shliach as a shliach kabbalah. Right? Yeah, he just said, I'm a shliach kabbalah. And really, it wasn't that it was a shliach kabbalah. Right? So therefore, what happens? Right? It becomes a problem now, because now there's a big mistake. So therefore, even if it does get to her hands, there's nothing there. Right? So says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Rava comes and he says, Tashema, let's bring another proof. Ktana shamra hitkabel giti. Imagine a case where we have a ktana, a minor, and she comes and she's married, and she says to a person, accept my get. Eno get at sheyagia get liada. It's still not a get until the get gets to her hands. Why? Because a katan cannot appoint a shaliach, and therefore this guy is not a shliach kabbalah. Means here she actually said it. She said, "Be my shliach kabbalah." There's a problem. She's a minor, so a minor, somebody under bar mitzvah, cannot make a shliach kabbalah. He cannot make a shliach. So therefore, until it doesn't get to her hands, she's not divorced.
Really,
so now, which one? Which one? Yeah, so says the Gemara, Kimati gita liada miya megarsha. But 1 second, when it gets to her hands, she should be divorced. V'amai, why? Says why? V'alav shliach lo lecha shavya. He says there's not a shliach lo lecha, which means the husband never appointed the guy a shliach lo lecha. He appointed the guy a shliach lekabbalah. But there's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because the woman, which is a ketana, cannot make a shliach lekabbalah. So for what does it help? Ela de'amrinan, but rather we say, Kevin shenatan nav legarsha, the fact that he wanted to come and he wanted to put his eyes to divorce her, Meimar Amar, we are going to come and we are going to say, Tigaresh kol hecha de megarsha. It's going to be megureshet, any form of girushin. Hachanami, so to here, shenatan nav legarsha, Meimar Amar, we're going to say, right, the what? Tigaresh kol hechi de megarsha, that it's going to help in any way of the girushin. Okay? So which basically the yesod is that once he wants to divorce her, he doesn't care, right, how to divorce her, right? And the reason why he doesn't care, right, how to divorce her is because, right, right, he comes and he says, right, at the end of the day, it doesn't help, it doesn't matter, right, in any way, right, or form, okay? Meaning that the person, he's going to do it in such a way that he wants her to divorce, and therefore he doesn't care how it's going to be divorced. Now, upon which they said beforehand, right, that it's only the father that can receive the get, right? It's actually incorrect. There's a machloket in the Gemara, right? Whether the Ketana could receive the get or only the father could receive the get. And even according to the Mandamar, that only the father could receive the get, here we're talking about a Yituma Ketana, and therefore she does receive her get. So it's incorrect to say that only the father could receive the get. It's actually a machloket, and we're going to see that even according to the other Mandamar, the Mishnah, but this is a Mishnah, you can't argue on a Mishnah, right? So therefore, this is what it is, okay? So says the Gemara, Hachi Hashta, can you compare both cases? Hatam, Adam Yodea she'en shlichut lekatan. He says, 1 second, how are you comparing both cases? A person knows that a katan cannot make a shaliach. Ve'gamar ve'natan la l'shmul chadidei. And therefore he gave it as a l'shem holacha. Hachatai. He says in the case of Nachman, it was a mistake, meaning like this. What do we bring a proof? We brought a proof from the Mishnah later on. Samech Amud Aleph. A ketana comes and she says, receive this get for me. Now we know, right, that she's not going to be divorced until it gets to her hands. When it gets to her hands, now she's divorced. That says the Gemara, 1 second. But when the husband came and he gave the get, the husband gave the get to the shaliach, not as a holacha, as a kabbalah. But she can't make a shliach kabbalah. She's a minor. A minor can't make a shliach. So how does that help? So therefore, this is a proof, right, that he just wanted to make it work whichever way possible. And that's the yesod. Once he gave the eyes to divorce, and any way possible to divorce. Kamarnu. Says the Gemara, you can't compare both cases. Over there, the husband already knows that she's a ketana. So she's a ketana, she can make a shliach. So if the shliach comes and he says, I'm the shliach le-kabbalah, the husband already knows it doesn't exist, the shliach kabbalah, because she cannot make a shliach. So for when he's giving him a get, he's already having in mind, this is my shliach lo-lacha, not the shliach kabbalah, because she cannot be a shliach kabbalah. The minor cannot have made her into a shliach le-kabbalah or made him into a shliach kabbalah. So if I'm making this guy into a shliach lo-lacha. What happens here? Here was a mistake. Because here, he went and he didn't know the entire thing. He thought that it was a shliach kabbalah. And therefore, he went and gave a shliach kabbalah. It wasn't a shliach kabbalah, and it was a shliach lo-lacha. But we weren't talking about a minor. So we weren't talking about a minor. So therefore, what are you talking about? So you can't compare both cases. So let's bring another question. The other question is Tashema. Haveli giti. Imagine a woman, right, comes and tells a man, bring me my get. Right? V'ishtecha amra, right? Then the guy comes and he says, your wife told me, hitkabel ligiti. Right? Or hitkabel ligiti. Right? What does that mean? V'ishtecha amra avel ligiti, which means this. The shaliach made the mistake. The shaliach comes, and the shaliach was a shaliach from the woman. Remember, now we're not talking about a minor. We finished with a minor. We're talking about a regular woman. The woman comes and makes a shliach. Whether it was that she went and she made the shliach, hitkabel ligiti, which means a shliach, the kabbalah. And then he went and he switched it. And he told the husband, right? He went and he told the husband, have ligiti. Right? Or the other way around. She went and she said to him, have ligiti, bring me my get, which is shliach lo lecha. And he went to the husband and he says, hitkabel, your wife said hitkabel ligiti. But it was the shliach that switched it. Okay? Vehu amar, now he comes and he tells the shliach, holech v'tenna, go and give it to her. Or he said, zechila, acquire it for her. Bimezakeh, right? Zocheh for her. V'itkabella. Or he said, accept it for her. Ratzah lachzor, yachzor. If he wants to retract, he's allowed to retract. Why? Because in all these cases, the shaliach still did not participate fully. Because he wasn't made into a real shaliach yet. However, though, mishegia leget liyada, once it gets to her hands, megureshet, she does become divorced. Now, why does she become divorced? If there was a mistake in the shlichut, so there was no shlichut. Right? There's no shlichut. Yeah, imagine right now a husband writes a get, and a monkey comes and takes the get to the woman. She gets it. Is she divorced? No. Says v'natanla. He has to give it to her. I got to her hands. Oh, I'm sorry. Doesn't matter. So now there's no difference between the monkey or a human being, right? That acts, a human being that he comes and if he wasn't made the proper shaliach, so it doesn't help. So for the exact same thing. So says the Gemara, my love, Kabbalah, ve'olacha la'olacha. When some of the husband was talking about Kabbalah to Kabbalah, And he said, "Itkabel uzacheh," for somebody that comes and he says a shliach for Kabbalah, and he said holech or ten for the one that says shliach lolacha, and still she's mevureshet. So the question is, you see from here that even though the shaliach made a mistake in what was his shlichut, she's still going to be divorced, right? We said that she shouldn't be divorced even if the get got to her hands, and here we're saying that she does get divorced once it gets to her hands, not beforehand, but once it gets to her hands, she does get divorced. And so the Gemara, no, Kabbalah olacha v'olacha Kabbalah. Here the kavanah was the husband. He actually switched, meaning like this: the shliach comes and he says, "I was made a shliach Kabbalah from your wife." Really, be'emet, he was made a shliach olacha. Or he comes and he says, "I was made a shliach olacha for your wife," and really he was a shliach Kabbalah. The husband, he went, and now there's a problem, a technical problem, because when he's giving over the get, he's giving over a get as a shliach olacha, and really it's a shliach Kabbalah, or a shliach Kabbalah, and really it's olacha. What's going on here? So there's a problem here. Right? How do you work? So we said before there was one answer. No. The second he wants to divorce her, he gives it to her in any fashion that it's going to work. But here though, we were talking about, but does that always work? There's not a proof. That's what we wanted to say. So here we wanted to say that he switched the words. Meaning for a shliach holacha, you always have to say 10. Right? Or helach, take it. Or give it. Right? For a shliach Kabbalah, you have to say hitkabel, or zacheh, receive it, or acquire it for her, like be zochet for her. Here he went and he switched it. When the shaliach came and he said that he's a shliach Kabbalah, he went and he said 10 or haveh, take it to her. And when the guy comes and he says he's shliach lolacha, he went and he said zacheh or hitkabel, acquire it for her or receive it for her. He switched the words. So says the Gemara, 1 second. Kabbalah olacha. If it was talking about where the husband went and he said a Kabbalah to a man that he said b'sheket that he was a shliach lolacha, so then it should be a get immediately. The shliach came and he said, right, that really be'emet, it's a olacha. The husband said, accept it as a Kabbalah. But that's what the woman also said. So immediately once it gets to his hands, she should be divorced. Because she wanted him as a Kabbalah, and the husband said he's going to be a Kabbalah. What do I care what the shliach said in the middle? What do I care what the shliach said in the middle? Shema mina, we learn from here that dibura didei kasamich, that we rely upon the shaliach. We rely upon the shaliach's words, and because of that, he's not actually acquiring it really 100%, because he's doing everything according to the shaliach. So says the Gemara, hachi ashta. Can you compare both cases? Hatam kamale, there he went and he said, Heilach kema she'amra. Take it just like my wife said. Right? He's a good husband. Even when he's getting divorced, he's always doing what his wife says. Yeah? He says, Heilach, take it to her just like the wife said. Hacha over here. Mi kamale heilach kema she'amra. Did he say, take it just like she said? Which means if the husband did not say that, and he just said he'd kabel, right? It's different. So the reason why she's not meguresha miyad when the get gets to the end of the shliach is because the person knows that he cannot make a shliach kabbalah for the wife, and therefore he made him into shliach lolacha. So you can't be somech on this case that he's doing like the words of the shaliach and that's it, right? It doesn't work. Fine. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Yeah, he comes and he says, right, we learned in a braita. Right? He comes and he says this. We learned in a braita. Okay? Hitkabel ligiti, v'ishtecha amra, hitkabel ligiti. Right? So imagine a woman comes and she says to the shliach, hitkabel ligiti. He comes and he tells the husband, Ishtecha amra, your wife said, hitkabel ligiti. Vehu omer, now he says, holech v'ten la. Meaning one more time. Until now, we were talking about the normal case, right? Which is basically holech, itkabel, chazak varuch. Then we spoke about a case where the shaliach messed it up. How did he mess it up? He messed it up in the way, right, that at the end of the day, he switched it. So he was supposed to be a shliach for Kabbalah. He made himself into halacha. Halacha, he made himself into Kabbalah. Okay, fine. So the shliach messed it up. Now we're talking about the shliach didn't mess it in the imam. The shliach did exactly what the wife said, but the husband messed it up now. So one more time. The woman comes and she says to a man, accept the get from me. Be a shliach Kabbalah. The shliach comes and he tells the husband, I'm a shliach Kabbalah from your wife. The husband says, take it to her, which means shliach lo lecha. What's halacha in such a case? Okay? One more time. Hitkabel li giti. The woman comes and she says, Hitkabel li giti. Be a shliach for Kabbalah. The shaliach comes and he tells the husband, Ishtecha amra, your wife told me, Hitkabel li giti. Chazak baruch, until now everything's perfect. Vehu omer, now the husband comes and he says, Holech v'ten la. Go and give it to her. Right? Or zachila, or be mizaket to her. V'tkabel la. Right? Or accept it for her. Right? Ratza lachzor, lo yachzor. So now, if the husband comes and he says, Holech v'ten la, or zachila, or v'tkabel la, right? Any one of these forms, the husband wants to retract, he cannot retract. That is what he cannot retract.
He confirms that he's Kabbalah.
One second, why? Because since the woman made him into a shliach lekabbalah and the husband agrees to it, because holech is kezachi. So therefore, he made him into a shliach lekabbalah. Rabbi Natan comes and he says, holech v'ten la, ratza lachzor bo. No. Holech v'ten la, you could retract, because he made him into a shliach lo lecha. Zachi la v'tkabel la, ratza lachzor lo yachzor bo. Okay? So then it doesn't help. So basically what we're trying to do is we're making a differentiation, right, between the two different cases. So says the Gemara, Rabbi comes and he says, yeah, bekulan, in all the cases, im ratza lachzor, if he wants to come and he wants to retract, right, lo yachzor, he cannot retract. Aval im amar lo, but if he comes and he says, EFC shetekabel la, ella holech v'ten la, ratza lachzor yachzor, which means this. It's not just enough that he changed the terminology. It's not just enough that he went and he said, holech v'ten la, instead of zachila v'tkabel la. It's not enough. He has to say, EFC shetekabel la. I don't want you to accept it for her, and therefore take it to her. According to the last shita, which is Rabbi, in that case, then it works. He could retract. Why? Because he had to explicitly renounce the shliach's rights by saying, I don't want you to accept it for her, but you could take it to her. And by doing that, that does work, according to Rabbi. Remember, there are three different shitot here. There was Tanakama, Rabbi Natan, and Rabbi. According to Tanakama, he can never retract, because holech is kizachi dami, meaning give it to her, take it to her, is like acquire it for her. So, and he was made a shliach Kabbalah, and that's what she really bemet made him. So it works. The second shita of Rabbi Natan was a compromise. Holech doesn't work, because he switched him. He switched him to shliach holecha. Any other language of accepting does work, and therefore he cannot retract. Rabbi comes and he says, nothing works unless he explicitly renounces his rights. If he explicitly renounces the rights, that does work. So says the Gemara, one second, Rabbi, Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi is the exact same shita as the Tanakama. That basically he cannot retract. So what's the difference between Rabbi and the Tanakama? So answers the Gemara, if you want, you can answer EFC atalishmina, that he's coming to teach you the EFC yesod, meaning like this. What was the Tanakama? He can never retract. He said holech kezachi dami. Helach, take it, is like you're saying that you're requiring it. Rabbi also said in all three cases you can't retract. So therefore, what's the difference? He said, no, the difference is the yesod of saying EFC. The yesod of saying, I renounce your rights as a shliach lekabbalah, and I want you only to take it. That's the first answer. Or if one you can answer, Kamashman comes teach you, Man Tanakama, who is the Tanakama? Rabbi. It is Rabbi. Okay? And therefore, since Rabbi is the Tanakama, that's what he was coming to teach you, that Rabbi is the Tanakama. We're going to now ask the following question. According to Shitat Rabbi Natan, right? Helach, according to Rabbi Natan, right? Kezachi dami or lav kezachi dami, which means like this. What is the dat, right? What is the dat of the husband that says helach? It's here in front of you. Yeah? According to Rabbi Natan, is that kezachi dami? Is that considered like kezachi or lav kezachi dami? Right? Or is it not considered like kezachi dami? right? So he comes and he says, because he didn't give him the get, the Torat Shliach LeKabbalah, but rather Shliach Lo Lecha. So Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. Haomer itkabel gezel ishti, or lech gezel ishti. Im ratzah lachzor yachzor. Remember, a person comes and he says, accept this get from my wife. Or he says, take this get from my wife. If he wants to retract, he can retract. Haisha shamra, the woman that says itkabel li get giti, accept this get. Ratzah lachzor lechzor. Now he cannot. Why? Because the second that she went and she told the shliach, accept this get, and now the husband gave the get, that's it. Now he can't retract because she already accepted it. That's it. What? No, it depends on what happened. Each case is different. Okay? So my love, are we not talking about behelach v'rebinatan? Are we not talking about the case where the husband tells the shliach, take this get, and we're going in the shitav rebinatan? So if so, right, when it says helach, it's considered like zacheh. So says the Gemara, no. We're talking about beholech, and this is shitat Rabbi. That according to shitat Rabbi, helach is considered zacheh. So therefore, we don't know what helach is. Right? Because the word holech is also like zacheh dami. So Tashema, let's try to bring another proof. Lefichach. Therefore, imamar lo abal, if the husband comes and he says, ifshi shetekabella ela holech, right? Which means, I don't want you to receive it, but I want you to take it to her, and give it to her. He could actually retract. Why? He changed the shlichut. She sent a shliach lekabbalah. He says, I don't want you to be a shliach kabbalah. I don't want you to be a shliach kabbalah. You be a shliach lo lecha. Take it to her. So, of course he has the power.
It's the woman who sent the shliach.
And he renounces the shlichut. I'm going to give you the get to be a shliach lo lecha, not kabbalah. I do not want you to receive it for her. He has the power of doing it. Right? Ta'ama de'amar ifshi. The reasoning why is because he said ifshi. But if he didn't say ifshi, he cannot retract. So my lover, we're not talking about be'elach, and according to Shitat Rabbi Natan, which means that according to Rabbi Natan, when you say the words helach, it's like you're saying zacheh dami. It's like that you're saying like zacheh, that you should be zochenet. And so no, we're saying holech get lishti, and this is going according to the Shitat Rabbi. That according to Shitat Rabbi, it's like holech is kizacheh. When you say take the get, it's like saying that you're going to be zochen in this get. Okay? Another case. Tashema. We're going to try to bring another proof now. Holech get lishti. The person comes and he says, take this get to his wife. If he wants, he could retract. Helach get lishti. Take this get to his wife. He doesn't say holech. He says helach. So he cannot retract. Man Shamaleh Damar, who's the one that says holech that you could retract? Rabbi Natan. The Kamar, but you still said helach. If you wanted to retract, you don't retract. Shemamina, we learn from here, helach is kizachet dami shemamina. That's what we actually learn. That there's going to be an intrinsic difference between helach and holech. Helach is more, take it for her and you're being zochet for her. Holech is you're only a shliach lo lacha, to take it to her. You're not acquiring it for her. So therefore, there's going to be a difference in the terminology about how does a husband say it. Does the shliach actually acquire it for her, right, or not? Itmar, it was stated. Hitkabel li giti. Imagine a woman comes and she says to a shaliach, accept the get for me. Ishtecha amra hitkabel li giti. And he tells the husband that your wife said, hitkabel li giti. So until here we're all good. Vehu omer, and he says, holech v'ten, take it and give it to her. Amar bi'aba v'rhuna marav, na'aseh shluchu shlucha. He becomes his shaliach and her shaliach. And therefore, what happens, right? If the husband dies without children, holetzet, she does chalitza. Right? Here it says the chalitza takes away from the yibum and he permits her to the shuk. So now, this case though, what happens exactly? So when a person gave this get in such a thing, it's like a safek. Because at the end of the day, right, it's like, it's in limbo. Now you have to say really manashach. It's either that she received the get and she's divorced immediately, or she doesn't receive the get and she's not divorced, but it's kilu, it's in no man's land. So therefore she has to do chalitza, she cannot do yibum. So says the Gemara, lememra de mesafka lerav. Are you going to tell me that there's a safek according to Rav? Iolech kezachi dami, ilav kezachi dami. Whether holech is like zocheh or not like zocheh. Vayitmar, it was stated, holech maneh leploni shani chayav lo. Imagine somebody comes and he gives money to a messenger, and he says, give this money to this person. Amar Rav says, he's chayav b'achrayut until it gets to the hands of the person. So I gave money to David to give to John Paul. Until it doesn't get to the hands of John Paul, David is chayav to watch over it. And if something happens, he has to pay it. Now, even so, if the loveh, the borrower, wants to retract and take the money back from David, he can't take the money back. Why? Because he was like already zocheh in the money for John Paul, right? So therefore it's like zocheh. So you see from here that holech maneh is like zocheh. So answers the Gemara Hatam over there, safek mamona lekula. The safek, right, is to do with the money. And therefore, since the safek is to do with the money, we go lekula, right? And therefore, even though there's safek, what was the kavanah of holech, right? We still go lenient, right? And therefore we say, no, he's already muhzak. Hacha, in our case, it's safek isura. Safek isura lechumna. Right? You understood? When you have a safek isur, you go lechumna. Here I have a safek isur. There's a married woman. I have a safek whether she was divorced or not. So I go lechumna. I say, no, she wasn't divorced yet. We're not really sure, so therefore, so she has to do chalitza, not yibum. Right? But mitzat sheni, we're not really sure. So she can do yibum, but she can't get married to the shuk. So she's in no man's land. So safek isura lechumna. There, right, there's safek momona lekula. So that's how we do that. Okay? Amar Rav says, a woman cannot make a shliach to receive the get from the shliach of her husband. Chanina says, no. She could make it. What's the reasoning of Rav? Why does Rav say that a woman cannot make the shliach? It says, it's because it's a bizayon to the husband, right? Because basically you're annulling the shliach of the husband, so it's like a bizayon of the husband. If you could answer, it's mishum chatzera because it's her chatzer, which is only coming after it, which means a chatzer that only becomes her chatzer after the husband already gave the get, right? So therefore, how does it work now to come, right, and to accept it? So because of that, there are two different reasons why, according to Shtat Rav, a woman cannot make a shliach lekabbalah from the shliach, with the same shliach basically, from the shliach of Ba'ala, that he was for holacha. What's the difference between the two reasons, whether it's because of bizayon al-Baal, or whether it's because of the chatzera, which is coming afterwards? So the difference between them is the kadma ihi, the shavya shliach miikara. What happens if she went and she made the shliach before, right, from the beginning? Which means, in such a case, right, he says, right, they're not going to come and change the chatzer Baal le'achar miken, but the suspicion of bizayon Baal, there is still a bizayon in the husband. Because basically what's happening? Imagine right now the husband comes and he says, I want her to receive the get, give the get in her hands. She says, I don't even want to receive it from him, not from his hands or his shaliach. I take my shaliach, receive it from him. It's bizayon. It's like huh? Yeah, it's like, oh, what's going on?
In the case of divorce, there is no. Yeah.
There was a person that sent to get to his wife through a shaliach. So he went and he saw that she was sitting down and she was kneading the batzek, how do you call this? Dough. Yeah? So what happens? Amala, he went and he said, here's your get. Amrale, she told him, right? It should stay in your hands. Right? That means be a sheikh le-kabbalah. Rav Nachman says, you need to look at Chanina, right? If it was barur that the halacha is like Rav Chanina, avdi biuvda. I would do this case, which means I would posek like him, that she's considered menureshet, right? Like Rav Chanina, because remember, Rav Chanina was the one that said a woman can make a shliach, the kabel gita, from the shliach of the husband. Right? Because imagine, she's here in the middle of dough. So she's going to say, you know what, you're my shliach la kabel etzeh. Amale Rav comes and he says, if we pass on Rav Chanina, avata ba'uvda, you're going to do it. Ha lo chazra shlichut etzel Baal. He says the shlichut is not, the en lo tokef. Therefore, she's not going to be divorced. Why? Because it did not go back to the husband, right? That means the original shlichut did not go back to the husband. So shalchu kamel de Rabbi Ami. They sent it in front of Rabbi Ami. Shalach leo, and he sent to them lo chazra shlichut etzel Baal, and therefore there's no tokef. She's not divorced. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar nityashev b'davar. let's try to be a ma'ayin tzat. Let's try to find out exactly what's this halacha. So Adur shalchu kamed Rabbi Baraba. So they went and they sent it to Rabbi Baraba. The Aman said, Kol hani shalchu la ve'azli. Right? Why is it that we continue asking the same question again and again and again? So just like you guys have a question, we also have the same doubt. Meaning the same doubt that we have it. Zoom. Yeah? So he comes and he says, Havi davar shebe'erva. This is considered davar shebe'erva. Davar shebe'erva chotletzet. Anything to do with the davar shebe'erva that we have a doubt what's going on, you do chalitza. Why? We don't know what's halacha. So she's not considered 100% divorced. She's not considered 100% married. She's in limbo. So you do chalitza, you can't do yibum. Right? If he dies in the middle. Hava uvda, there was another case also. Get v'chalitza. So he said, no, you have to have a get and chalitza. Right? Now the question is, how do you do that? Right? So he comes and he says, tarte? How do you do both? Get mechayim v'chalitza. I don't understand. The husband died. If the husband died, it's chalitza. And if the husband's not dead, so you have to give a get. What's chalitza then? How does this make sense? So he says, right? It doesn't make sense. No? Doesn't say actually. Yeah? Sorry, that was the answer. Meaning the Gemara was actually saying, you're right. You don't need to do both. It's both, meaning either or. No. Either get when he's alive or chalitza when he's dead. But you cannot be both. That's what they're saying because it's in limbo. You're in the middle. Haidavu karula nefata. There's a woman that her name was, instead of frecha, her name was nefata. Azul sade katuv. The Deabal went and they wrote a get by mistake, and they wrote tafata instead of nafata, tafata. So Amar of Yitzchak bar Shmuel went to Mishmei Derav, asu edim shluchutan. Right? They wrote the get pasul, and therefore they cannot write another get. Meaning, if they already did their shlichut and they gave over the get, it was a mistake. It wasn't a good get, so then they can do anything. So Matkifla Rabba comes and he asks, Mi kama lehu ketov uchaspa vavula. Did he tell them, write a piece of pottery and give it to her? He told her, give her a get. This wasn't a get. This was a piece of pottery. But rather Rabba says, they would have written a good get, and then it got lost. Then you're right. Meaning, if they wrote a good get, and then it got lost in Acharami, they did the shlichut, they don't have the power to do it again. But here, they didn't do it. So Matki, Rav Nachman comes and he asks the following question. Yeah, mi kama lehu kitvu v'anchua b'sichayim. Did he say write the get and place it in their pockets? Right? The kitzchem? For sure not. Which means he told them to write a get and give it to their wife. So the fact that they didn't do their shlichut and they didn't give it to her, the shlichut didn't finish. If it got lost, what do I care if it got lost? They still didn't finish the shlichut. And Rav Nachman says, you write it and you give it over even 100 times. Okay? So ask Rabbi from Nachman, right? What happens right now if the husband comes and he says, Kitvu get lishti and give it to the shliach l'olacha. And that's what they did. And the get got lost. Now what's halacha? So saluk salikelu, you come and you say, right, that what? That the husband comes and he says it, therefore they took themselves away from it. Okay. Or Dilmar, maybe litrecha didhu chaish. He didn't want to be matriach otam. And therefore, because of that, he was going to give it to his shaliach. But not be'emet that he finished the job. Really be'emet, if they really need another get, they could do another get. Well, the thing is, he just didn't want to bother him. So says the Gemara, right? Amale Ravina Ravashi, says Ravina to Ravashi, right? Violichla, right? If in such a case, right, where he comes and he says, Yolichla to get what's halacha? So take, we don't have an answer in such a case. Right? Why? Because if he says Kidvu get ishti and give it to the shliach, and then afterwards, in Yolichla to get, so therefore take, we don't have an answer, right, on such a case. Okay, Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer, Shimon Gamliel is coming and says, Apa Omer, it's also a woman that says, right, also a woman that comes and says, Toli giti, take my get, Im ratzah lachzor lo yachzor. Right? He cannot retract. Why? Because once it was given to the shaliach, he cannot retract because it's already his. We learned also, right? That totally, right? Vesali, v'yeheli, v'yadecha, ulan lashon kabbalah. Anytime that she's going to say, take for me, carry for me, or this get should be in your hand, right? For me, in all these cases are all lashon kabbalah. Once it's all lashon kabbalah, she receives it.
Can she marry?
Okay.
Can she marry?